Okay, well, good day to everyone. I just want to say welcome to all of our colleagues and network members. Thank you so much for joining us for this breakout session, the CDFI Fund and You. My name is Chriselle Martinez, and I am the CDFI Program Director at Inclusiv. Before we begin, some really quick housekeeping tips. Please make sure and leave your camera on so we can see you during the session. Feel free to discuss and think about things that we're sharing in this breakout session, and use the chat box and Q&A function to ask some questions. If you're having any technical difficulties, make sure you click on that support bubble to the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Also, don't forget to hashtag at #CDCU Con 2021 to keep the discussions going. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and you can also follow us on LinkedIn, which is where you'll find me most of the time. All of our post-conference videos, our sessions will be available after October 11th on the Inclusiv YouTube channel. And all of our speaker bios you can find online at inclusiv.org. And now I would like to introduce our CDFI Fund panelists for today's session. Marcia Sigal is the Deputy Director for Policy and Programs for the CDFI Fund, where she oversees the efforts of all the CDFI Fund's award programs in support of the CDFI Fund strategic vision. She previously served as the Program Manager of the Capital Magnet Fund. Andrew Schlack currently serves as the Acting CDFI Program and NACA and ACA Program Manager at the CDFI Fund. Andrew joined the CDFI program and NACA program in April of 2017 and has served as Associate Program Manager since October of 2018. Heather Hunt is the Program Manager for the Office of Compliance Monitoring and Evaluation at the CDFI Fund. In this role, she is responsible for the management of the CDFI Fund's compliance, reporting, and monitoring functions. Deputy Director Sigal, Andrew, and Heather, thank you all so much for joining us today on this panel. And now I would like to introduce Inclusiv Senior Consultant, Terry Radigan. Terry plays a leading role in research and data analytics on the performance and impact of community development credit unions, CDCU training, and inclusive CDFI advocacy. As a member of the Inclusiv Network Consulting Services team, he provides expertise on CDFI certification, recertification, grant writing, and strategic planning for CDCUs around the country. And like everyone else, I want to be like Terry. Terry, we would love for you to kick off our panel with an industry overview and lead us into the panel Q&A session. Take it away, Terry.
Thank you, Chriselle, and thrilled to be here with everyone, and especially we can advance to the next slide. Especially thrilled to be here with our special guests. I am going to try and take as little time away from them as possible. You all heard from Director Jody Harris yesterday that this has actually been a very slow year for the CDFI Fund. So we were happy to give our three guests something to do to fill all that idle time. And I am just kidding. This has been an incredibly busy and productive time for the CDFI Fund. So we are tremendously grateful. We can go on to the next slide. Just going to talk very quickly just to provide a little bit of context. I know we have with us, many of you are CDFIs that are already certified. We also have credit unions joining us that are not yet CDFI certified and are interested in learning a little bit more from the field. Some of you that are joining us today have grants, some of you do not. So I want to just do a little table setting to make sure that we're all kind of in the same place. So we're going to talk a little bit about how did we get here, what this year of CDFIs has been, and then as quickly as possible get into the exciting part of the program, which is conversation with our guests. And we can move on to the next slide. So just a refresher, CDFI Fund has been around since 1994. Inclusiv was instrumental in the campaign to establish the fund. Inclusiv was also among the very first group of, kind of the chartered class of certified CDFIs. So Inclusiv is not only an advocate for CDFI credit unions and an advocate on behalf of CDFI credit unions, but Inclusiv is itself a CDFI. So we kind of see the CDFI fund from both sides. You can go on to the next slide. And if you could click one more time, up until the awareness among credit unions of the CDFI fund and CDFI certification, what even the term CDFI meant, was rather limited up until the eve of the Great Recession. At that time, there were only 123 certified credit unions around the country. Actually, the average asset size, I guess we clicked a little too far. The average asset size at that time was just $29 million. That's it. $29 million in average assets, serving combined less than 700,000 people around the country. And then you can go to the next slide and click again. By the end of last year, whoops, it missed an animation. Anyway, by the end of last year, there were 341 certified credit unions. Already this week, the CDFI fund, this particular slide is already out of date because it shows 376 certified credit unions. That has already risen to 385. The average asset size now is about 500 million. But it's important to bear in mind that the range of sizes of CDFI credit unions still covers the entire gamut, the entire spectrum of credit unions in the United States. We have CDFI certified credit unions with more than 9 billion, and we have certified credit unions with less than 1 million in assets and everything in between. We are now serving more than 13.5 million people around the country. And while, by number, CDFI credit unions make up just about 30% of the industry, we serve more people than the rest of the CDFI industry combined. And we also represent about 3/4 of the total assets for all CDFIs. So Amanda, if you can move on to the next slide after that. And we will talk about the year of CDFIs. As you have heard from several of the speakers in plenary sessions, this really has been a, I don't want to use the word unprecedented again, but it has been a monumentally important year for the CDFI fund and for CDFIs, with the $12 billion in resources that have been committed, $3 billion to the CDFI fund and $9 billion to Treasury for the Emergency Capital Investment Program. We can go on to the next slide. The resources through the CDFI fund, there are certain programs that do require that you be CDFI certified. Financial assistance grants are available every year from the CDFI fund. The $3 billion special allocation was divided.
So it's real quick.
Was divided into. Oh, I'm getting some crosstalk. Divided into two programs: the Rapid Response Program grants and the upcoming Minority Lending Program, which again Director Harris spoke of yesterday. There are some programs where you can be CDFI certified or CDFI eligible and still apply for grants from the CDFI fund. Those are called technical assistance grants. In this slide, I say CDFIs and MDIs because minority depository credit unions are generally highly eligible for certification and would be eligible there. The ECIP program, the $9 billion in secondary capital, was for CDFI certified institutions, and MDI credit unions were also eligible for that. You can move on to the next slide. As I said, the rapid response program, that was 1.25 billion. Those awards were announced in mid-June. 400 million, just over 400 million, were awarded to 244 credit unions. I just want to say that was essentially 100% of all credit unions that applied. It was a very efficient program. It was a record number and amount of capital. This is permanent capital for growth, for building capacity among credit unions, critically important at this time. And that 1.75 billion for the one minority lending program also will require that you be CDFI certified. It is still under development, and we expect it to be announced sometime next year. Next slide, please, Amanda. So the question is your credit union certified? And you can go on to the next slide, click right ahead. Just want to remind those of you that may not be certified at this time. Right now, we are at a very special opportunity for credit unions to apply for certification through NCUA's Streamlined certification process. This process will close on October 15th. You must be a low-income designated credit union. It is by far the fastest path to certification. There is no streamlined process for any other type of CDFI except credit unions. So if you are not yet certified, it's worth trying. You can click on the link here. If you have any questions, you can contact me or Chriselle or Jules or anybody at Inclusiv, and we can help you get started. And with that, I think we can turn it over to our special guests. And I will throw it back to Chriselle.
There we go. Thank you so much, Terry. We appreciate that. I am going to hand it over to Deputy Director Sigal, and she is going to kick us off.
Thank you so much, Chriselle, and thank you, Terry. We are very happy to see you. I'm looking at all the faces in the cameras from the computer, and I want to say thank you all so much for having us. And we're here in Washington, D.C. I'm in my little den here. We are all working from home, as probably many of you are as well. And it has been the year of the CDFIs. So let me start off by saying that my team and I, as Terry said, I'm going to go through all the programs and give you status update. But my team and I worked really, really hard this year to get as much money in the hands of CDFIs as possible as we are shouldering through, the impact of the pandemic on our communities that we're trying to serve. And, obviously you all are right there with the folks that are needing the funds. And we so appreciate everything that you're doing. And it feels good to connect in this way because we don't, we're at home trying to figure out, what's the best way to communicate this and what's the best way to get the money out. And it's opportunities like this where we get to see you and talk to you that, help motivate us, frankly, and help us stay connected to what's happening and to the objectives that we're trying to achieve. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time right now talking about all of our programs. So because I understood from Terry and Chriselle that there's some folks in the audience that are new to the CDFI Fund, new to certification and so forth. And but we will spend most of the time drilling down on the ones that I know that you're all particularly interested in. And I see some of you smiling because I know which ones you're interested in. So, okay, but I'm going to, we have right now 9 programs and 3 sub-programs that we are administrating. And Andrew's going to talk in depth a little bit about the Financial Assistance Awards, the NACA Awards, TA Awards, and RRP from the program end. But I'm just going to say, for those of you who are interested and haven't yet applied to be certified and need these funds, please do take Terry's and Chriselle's invitation and try to become certified so you can apply next year. So part of what Jody and I coordinate when we speak at these things is that I'm supposed to drill down a little bit into the status of when things are coming and where they're coming, when they're coming to you. So and Andrew will speak about this a little bit, but we are in progress with the Financial Assistance and NACA Awards. And as some of you may have also in the audience applied for rapid response, RRP was the stimulus program, the $1.25 billion that one of the ones that Terry referred to. And the financial assistance program applications came out relatively at the same time. And we had to do that in some ways to keep the regular financial assistance program rolling while we were trying to get the special pot of funds out to you. So as you know, we announced the Technical Assistance Awards this past week, and we plan to announce the Financial Assistance Awards later this year. But we do plan to open the round for the next financial assistance, pretty much regularly on schedule. And Andrew will talk a little bit about that as well. So for those of you that are newbies, financial assistance, Native American assistance, technical assistance, something called HFFI, which is Healthy Foods Financing Initiative, and something called DFFA, which is specifically for serving people with disabilities, are all bundled up in one application round that Andrew's going to talk a little bit about. And that's, being that it's the year of the CDFIs, I'm also calculating how much money we have and how much money we're giving out. And so annually those funds are appropriated, and it varies. I know that it has been going up, and it probably will continue to go up. Now, the other thing I want to talk about today is the small dollar loan program. That was a new program that we just launched this year. Interestingly enough, the program was originally created in the Dodd-Frank Act of 2010. It never got funded. It was a program that was created to provide an alternative to predatory and payday lenders in the height of the, what did you call it, Terry? The Great Recession, the previous recession. Okay, it was a program that was supposed to have been funded that Congress just never got around to funding, and then separate from the pandemic, because they started appropriating funds the year before the pandemic, it got more traction in Congress, and they gave us our first appropriation for this. And there were a number of credit unions that applied, and credit unions are eligible if they're certified CDFIs. We did some coordination with some of the regulators, including NCUA, to understand some of what credit unions were already doing in this arena. And we are going to announce those awards very shortly for the first round, the inaugural round of the small dollar loan program. The key thing about the small dollar loan program is that at the time when it was created in 2010, there were two obstacles identified to Congress as obstacles for to lenders that lenders were concerned about to start or increase small dollar lending. One was risk, obviously, and the other was operating costs, because small dollar loans typically don't generate a lot of fees, don't generate a lot of profit, and so the cost to operate them as well as the risk. So essentially, small dollar loan grants that we're going to give out will pay for loan loss reserves to eliminate risk, and operating costs that we call technical assistance, but they're basically for operating costs. So you can apply for one or the other or both. So when we're going to open the next round of that next spring, it'll be a little bit sooner, in the next coming year, calendar year, in 2022 than it was this past year. But we were happy to get the funding. We see a great deal of interest in the program, which is encouraging, and we'll be doing some extensive outreach, probably starting in the early winter, like probably February, to kind of make sure that folks understand the program and help folks understand how to apply. But we did get a good number of applications this past year as well. I think we had 81 applications. So we're excited about that. It's a small but mighty program, like only like 13 million dollars have been appropriated for it, but it can have a huge impact in communities. And I'm sure those of you that have small dollar loan programs in your credit unions understand the impact that it can have. I'm going to talk a little bit about some other programs that we have. The Capital Magnet Fund, which is the CDFI Fund's affordable housing program, opened its round last week. That's a program that provides grants to CDFIs or qualified affordable housing developers to leverage with other funds to produce affordable housing. This year, we had an unprecedented amount of funding for that program. The source of the funds for Capital Magnet Fund come from proceeds from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They're not appropriated, it's not an appropriated program. And as I'm sure most of you are aware, there's been a big boom in the housing industry. There's been a big boom in refis. And so all of the funds are generated based on the new mortgage originations that Fannie and Freddie purchased. And last year we had $170 million that we gave out. This year we have $380 million to give out. And we made some adjustments to that NOFA, Notice of Fund Availability, to kind of accommodate the larger amount of funding that we have. But we are really encouraging everybody that's certified and is interested to apply for funding, because we have, you know, a lot this year, and likely we'll have a lot next year as well. So that's a round that's open right now. So if you go to our website, and Chriselle will send out the links, it will bring you right to the page for the application, and you can read the NOFA and application. We also have something called the New Markets Tax Credit Program, just by way of just education. That's a tax credit program that provides credits to investors with the proceeds of the investments go to create economic development in low-income communities. There's a different certification that one needs to have to apply for that program. It's called a Certified Development Entity, or CDE. But I do want everyone to know about it, because even if you're not going to apply for it, you may be partnering with some folks at the local level that may be applying for it. And that also just received an increase from $3.5 billion to $5 billion on an annual basis. So those are programs that we do feel are effective, and we just want to make people aware of them. We have a Bank Enterprise Award program, which unfortunately credit unions are not eligible to apply for, but you know, if you have friends that are in the industry, that application will be opening in October. The one in November, New Markets will be opening sometime shortly in this fall. So now I'm going to go to the Year of the CDFI before I turn it over to Andrew and to Heather. The Rapid Response Program was a program that we specifically designed to be quick, to be nimble, you know, and to get the $1.25 billion out as soon as possible. Those of you who applied experienced the similarity in the application to the FA program. That was done on purpose. We wanted to make sure that that, you know, we made it easy to apply. And just like you all have been working a lot of hard work and a lot of hours back in your credit unions, the CDFI Fund staff, I don't want to embarrass them or brag on them or, you know, whatever, but they did a phenomenal job to get this done in record time. You know, when you're launching a new federal program, I used to work at the local level, so did Andrew, so did Heather. You know, when you come to the federal level, you know, when people talk about, you know, it's a bigger, people sometimes call it a bureaucracy. I'm not going to do that because I'm a federal employee, but I am going to say that, you know, it's a bigger scale, right? And it's a lot more people involved. It's a lot more processes involved. So, you know, the fact that we were able to pivot, you know, basically and publish the NOFA, you know, 2 months after the funds were appropriated by Congress is really a testament to my staff skill and to their dedication. All with the end user in mind. The same folks that we're trying to serve are the folks that you're serving. And Andrew's going to go into some specifics about, where we're at with the status of that program. But I just want to say that, we were really pleased with the results, and we hope that the funds are going to be helpful in your communities. As Jody mentioned yesterday, the minority lending program is in development. I'm working on that. I'm leading that effort right now with the team that we hired, especially to create the minority lending program. And we do expect that we're going to open that application round sometime next year. There's, again, a lot of different layers. It's a different approach than some of our other programs. It has a different purpose than some of our other programs. So we want to be careful and do it right, because it's a very precious resource to have $1.75 billion for this effort. So it is indeed the year of the CDFI. And I want to say that congratulations to each of you that have been working hard to put these funds to good use. There's no returning to normal anymore. The word normal is not really in my vocabulary anymore, but I just will say that in terms of those of you who have been participating in our programs, we will go back to, we moved a lot of things around this past year to accommodate the new stimulus programs that we have. But in terms of schedule, which is I know some of what people want to hear from us when we come to speak at these conferences, we'll be going back to pretty much the same order that we had been doing previously, starting with new markets going out in the fall, in terms of opening the round, and then with all of our other programs in succession, starting the beginning of the calendar year. Unless Congress gives us some other new stimulus program to do. Some of you may have heard about the legislative proposals for CMF. I think there was some things going around with the America's Jobs Plan, and that will be part of the budget reconciliation bill that Congress passes or doesn't pass. I can't predict. But that will be a new program with billions of dollars for affordable housing. We will launch that as soon as we can, but it won't be as quickly as MLP or the Rapid Response Program, because it will need an entirely new regulation. There is one other program I will mention, and I do believe that some credit unions or affiliates of credit unions have participated in, which is the Bond Guarantee Program. That's a program that's quite interesting, because basically the proceeds from bonds are loaned to CDFIs to invest in, I think it's like 12 different asset classes. That program has a $500 million a year authority, and we just are about to announce our awards for this year, and we will be opening that round up for applications again in February. So I encourage you all to look for information on our website about this. And, I had a chart that I was going to present, but then I was fiddling with it, so I decided not to. But essentially, we are on an upward trajectory in terms of funding. And, with all of the resources that we have, we're basically going to be close to $7 billion that we're administering and awarding between tax credits, bond loan authority, and grants. And we're pleased to be in this place where we're able to provide resources to you. And I hope that you find your exchanges with our staff helpful, because we are here to help you. So I'll just end there and turn it over to Andrew. I know there's going to be some questions in the chat, but he's got all the goods when it comes to RRP and the FA program. So I'm going to ask him to drill down a little bit. I may make some color commentary along the way. We'll see.
Please do. Hey, terrific. Thank you, Marcia, for that intro. And it really is a joy to be here. We look forward to this event every year on behalf of the CDFI Native Initiatives team. It's a great chance to hear from you and to answer your questions. So excited to participate again this year. As Marcia and Terry have shared, I'm the acting program manager with the CDFI Native Initiatives team. And for folks that might be new to the rooms here, the CDFI and Native Initiatives team administers the flagship programs of the CDFI Fund, which include the Technical Assistance Program, which is set up for both certified and uncertified CDFIs. And I'll talk about why that deadline that Terry mentioned in his opening remarks of October 15th is so critical. But essentially the TA, or Technical Assistance Program, is set up for both certified and uncertified CDFIs, and the Financial Assistance Program, including its supplemental programs, which are the Healthy Foods Financing Initiative, the Disability Funds, and the Persistent Poverty County monies, which are all administered under financial assistance, are only available to certified CDFIs. So I just want to underscore the importance of that deadline that Terry mentioned of October 15th. That's the date at which you should have submitted your application for certification in order to be certified by the time the NOFAs are published for the competitive financial assistance program. As Marcia mentioned also this year, and everyone has mentioned, it's part of the upward trajectory. We were really pleased to be able to administer the $1.25 billion in rapid response program funds, which were designed to help with the COVID recovery. And as mentioned, on June 15th, we announced 863 certified CDFIs received these funds. Again, record number, of course, of credit unions, 402 million in awards were given to credit unions and cooperatives to 244 organizations, which was over 25% of the funds available. And as Terry mentioned, almost all, this was sort of an availability or formula-based program. So we highly encouraged all certified CDFIs to submit applications, and we were very pleased to be able to fund a majority of those applications. I have real-time updates, of course, because we love data at the CDFI Fund. So we do love to share, too, the fact that over 95% of these awards have been closed, which represents 815 recipients. So that's just a remarkable stat in its own right. And in total dollars out the door, we have dispersed now $1.1 billion in the capital that was committed under the program. And if we reflect back, when the award announcements were made and the assistance agreements became available and folks were closing on their assistance agreements, I like to say there's a whole lot of clicking going on. It might be a song, but there is a lot of approvals and processing and due processing happening at the CDFI Fund, as you can imagine, with that number of awards. I just did want to share that, it can take up to 2 to 4 weeks under the best of circumstances, depending on due diligence and documentation that's necessary for us to close the award. As part of the federal government, we have specific standards and documentation processes to follow. And these include things that can really, I know it sounds like a foot fault or formulaic, but these things really do result in significant delays. So I think it's just prudent to mention them. Things like not having your bank account information correct in sam.gov, or having, the wrong DUNS number, or a mismatch between your organization name in our awards management system and sam.gov. All of these factors, another popular one this year, given that there were a number of new recipients, is the authorized representative, countersigning the assistance agreement, needs to have the incumbent authorities to enter legally binding agreements on behalf of the recipient. And so we found a lot of instances where, the improper authority, administrative, executive associate, job titles that weren't clearly identified as having the authority. And all of these things, I know it sounds, but I just want to stress the importance that we're following these processes, and unfortunately, these can result in minors, in setbacks. And so we're attuned to the conversation that's going on in the industry. And I think that represented with the 42 organizations whose assistance agreements are still outstanding, they're in some process of what I just, the aforementioned, I've got a bad bank account, my authorized representative isn't right, or I'm requesting some sort of modification. So I just wanted to give that real-time update on RRP, but hats off to all the credit unions that applied, and we're so proud to be able to support so many of the organizations through that process. I also wanted to mention, as was shared earlier, the Technical Assistance Award. So we announced last Thursday that 191 organizations were receiving over $24 million in technical assistance funds. which again, there's a trend going on here, but that is also a record, of course, number of dollars and applicants. And I pulled the stats for this particular conversation with credit unions. It's remarkable. There were 94 credit union and cooperativa agreements, technical assistance commitments, which is about half. So if you think of the statistic Terry gave earlier about the share of credit unions applying, half of our TA awardees this year were to credit unions, and sort of closely correlated with that, $12 million was committed to credit unions, which again is about half of the total TA dollars. The other thing to mention then is the split with the FA award. So historically, we've tried to sync up the announcement on TA and FA due to all the other activities with RRP, et cetera. This year, we split the announcement, which we did also back in 2019, subsequent to the government shutdown. But we will and are on track to make our financial assistance awards by the end of the calendar year, and closings on both the TA awards and the FA awards will happen subsequent to the FA announcement. Which brings me to the last point I wanted to make before pitching it over to Heather is, looking forward to the 2022 round. And again, this October 15th deadline that Terry mentioned, if you're not yet certified, please start engaging. You have less than a month to get that together, but given the fast track that credit unions have to the certification process, there's still time if you're interested in becoming certified. But I will say, if you've not started that process yet, we have a program for all financial institutions, basically. And that entry point oftentimes for uncertified groups is to apply for the technical assistance program, because the primary performance goal and measure for an uncertified organization receiving a TA award is to become certified. And that's exactly what a number of CDFI credit unions will do, is they'll sort of come through the door into the technical assistance realm. Those grants are $125,000 for non-native serving CDFIs or financial institutions, and up to $150,000 for CDFIs or financial institutions serving Native communities. And that can be this catalytic capital that's often used to, organize and get the infrastructure in place and go through the certification process, which then opens all these other doors to the menu of programs that Marcia introduced in her remarks, including FA and all the supplemental programs. So looking ahead beyond that October 15th deadline is just to mention that we're on an annual cycle, and we will typically release our notice of funds availability in the first quarter, I'll say, of the calendar year. And so keep your eyes, sign up for the .gov notices, and you'll get the email alerts, and all this is available. Of course, Chriselle has put the information on the chat window to sign up for these deliveries, so that you'll get an announcement as soon as the NOFA is released. And then the application is open for roughly 60 days. And there are two important deadlines as part of our application. One occurs about 30 days after the opening of the NOFA, and that's to submit your SF-424, which is a lower hurdle, and you need to get that in on time. And then the broader application has a due date, usually 60 days after the announcement of the NOFA. So that's what's looking out on the horizon for the CDFI and NACA program. And at this point, I think I'll just pass the ball over to Heather.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you all again for inviting me to speak today. During today's session, I wanted to provide you all with some helpful tips and tricks to help you maintain compliance with those RRP awards that you just received. One of the strategic goals of my team is to ensure we are providing you all with the technical assistance you need in order to set you up for success and carry out the intent of those projects. So I want to start and give you all a high-level breakdown of how the CDFI Fund is monitoring compliance with your RRP awards. And this is done so through three different components. So first is the timely submission of your reports. The second is the progress towards achieving the performance benchmarks that are outlined in your agreement. And lastly, we are monitoring to ensure that you're using the award funds in the eligible categories listed in your assistance agreement. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about your annual compliance reports. So first things first, please, I know this sounds silly, but I can't reiterate it enough. If you have not done so already, please read through your agreement in its entirety and become familiar with your upcoming reporting deadlines and performance goals. We have set up AMIS, so it will send out automatic reporting reminders 30 days and 15 days prior to your report deadline. In order for you to receive those notices, please make sure that you mark AMIS as a safe sender. That way those reporting reminders aren't sent to your spam boxes. And for those organizations that are receiving your first awards from the CDFI Fund, just a quick note that all of your compliance reporting is done via the Awards Management Information System. So that's the same system that you applied for funding in. And RRP recipients are required to submit a series of reports. There's 2 reports that are due 3 months after your fiscal year end. That is the Uses of Award report and the Performance Progress report. You're also going to be required to submit the transaction level report 6 months after your fiscal year end. And we've heard a lot from the industry regarding the transaction level report. And if you're required to submit a separate transaction level report, if you also received a financial assistance award versus a rapid response program award, and you do not, you only need to submit 1 transaction level report each fiscal year per your organization, no matter how many awards you receive. So I just wanted to clarify that for everybody. And you'll also notice that RRP recipients are required to submit the Uses of Award, Performance Progress Report, and Transaction Level reports before completing your first full period of performance. This is a little bit different than what's required in the financial assistance awards that you're used to. And the reason we had to mandate this interim reporting period is because as a result of the stimulus funding, we have been congressionally mandated to report out on the impacts of this program. So when you're reporting, please keep in mind that you're just providing us with this data that we need for the interim reporting period, and you're not going to be required to meet any performance benchmarks throughout this period. The other report that I wanted to go into detail about is the financial statement audit report, and this is due 6 months after your fiscal year end. Now, we've received a lot of inquiries since credit unions do have a 12/31 fiscal year end, or you don't all actually have a 12/31 fiscal year end. You have your audits based on the March, June, or September fiscal years. And as a result, your audit reports might not be ready to upload by the report deadline that is stipulated in your assistance agreement. So for example, if your fiscal year end is 6/30, and then you have your single audit that you would be completing at the 9/30 deadline, you're not going to fall out of compliance. So don't be alarmed. What we do ask is that you complete the financial statement audit report within the AMIS system, and you answer the series of yes or no questions and let us know that your audited financial statement has not been completed yet. And we will work with you so that way there's no non-compliance implications for not submitting your report by those deadlines that are stipulated in the assistance agreement. And then the last report I wanted to touch on is the single audit report. If you are required to submit this report, it is due 9 months after your organization's fiscal year end. And that's only required for those organizations that expend more than $750,000 in federal award funds in a fiscal year. So just consult with your accounting department to determine if that's necessary. And regarding reporting, if you ever have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. We do ask that you submit a service request via your organization's AMIS account. That way we can channel your inquiry to the proper department within the CDFI fund, and we will respond to that as quickly as possible. And last thing to point out on actual reporting is just a quick reminder that there are compliance resources available on the CDFI Fund website that will walk you through how to complete the necessary compliance reports.
Heather, this is Marcia. I think I want to just throw this to you and Andrew, because I can't remember if one of you covered this or not. In terms of the RRP reporting versus the reporting for your FA program, we have told recipients that they cannot count the same loans, right, for the RRP grants as they are for the FA grants. I don't know if I don't think I heard either of you say that yet, but I know that was one of the things we really want to make clear to folks, right?
Yes, this is a great segue. You just took me to the next part of my presentation. So I'm going to touch on some of the tips for compliance reporting with your performance goals. So compliance with the performance goals and measures that are outlined in your agreement are going to be monitored through the performance progress report, your uses of award report, and your transaction level report. And RRP recipients do have a separate set of performance benchmarks that you're required to meet. Just real quickly, all RRP recipients are required to expend 90% of their initial RRP assistance by the end of the first year of the period of performance, and then 100% of the RRP assistance by the end of the period of performance. And make sure you look through those approved eligible categories that are listed in your agreement. That's section 3.7 of your assistance agreement for more details on that. And then there are two other benchmarks depending on the type of award you received. So recipients that received an award greater than $200,000 and that do not qualify for the CDFI Fund Rapid Response Program funding designated to benefit Native communities are required to close financial products in eligible markets or the recipient's approved target market in accordance with the benchmarks outlined in their agreement. And the other benchmark that recipients may have received, depending on the type of application they applied for, is that qualify for the CDFI Rapid Response Program and the funding is designated to benefit Native communities. You're also required to meet a similar benchmark and close financial products in Native communities in an amount equal than or greater to the benchmarks listed in your agreement. And then what Marcia was just touching on is credit unions with both rapid response program and financial assistance awards from the CDFI fund, they cannot count loans towards both performance goals. So what does that mean? That means that financial products that are reported under any performance goal for a CDFI program or NACA program award may not be reported for the performance goal, and any financial products reported under any performance goal for the CDFI and NACA program. So basically, if you have an RRP award, you cannot double count that transaction to meet the performance benchmarks in your financial assistance base award. And this is also consistent with other supplemental programs like the HFFI, PPC, DFFA that Marcia mentioned earlier on in her presentation. And you'll want to allocate, the best way to do this is allocate your hardest to use monies first towards those benchmarks. So since HFFI, PPC, DFFA, those have specific requirements that you have to adhere to for using those dollars, you'll want to allocate your transactions that meet those certain criteria first, and then use all your other ones to count towards your base FA transactions. Andrew, did I say that correctly? Did you want to add anything to that?
That was a perfect description. And I think, just to say it a different way, a lot of people think of it as sort of like a waterfall schedule, right? So if you could imagine, using, as Heather suggested, the hardest to use dollars at the top, and then what funnels down and what's left over really are the easier to use, which would satisfy, the rapid response program is actually above the base FA. So if you do have multiple RRP, the last money, which is the most flexible because it's kind of the longest term, you need to think strategically about where you allocate each of the transactions to satisfy the particular PG&Ms. That was spot on, Heather. Thank you. Thanks for mentioning that.
Thanks, Andrew. And with that, as if that's not enough information on compliance reporting, that concludes what I wanted to cover for today's presentation. So I'm going to turn it back over to Chriselle or Terry.
I'd just like to make a comment, and thank you all for tremendous information. But as Jody said in her remarks yesterday as well, with these historic levels of resources coming to CDFIs, there are compliance expectations. And I think it's important for all of us to understand, that you at the CDFI fund, you're not asking for this information just because you're curious. You are responsible to the people that wrote the checks on Capitol Hill, and who are responsible ultimately to the taxpayers that are providing these resources. So while it does sound like, and it's more, kind of detailed than we can do justice to in this period, there's a lot of support available from the CDFI fund, from Inclusiv, especially for first-time awardees going through the process. Compliance is not something that's new to credit unions. We are regulated financial institutions. So this is very much in our DNA. This is really, the first time through something, it's a steeper learning curve. But just like, it's, believe me, not as detailed as going through an examination or doing your quarterly call reports. So any credit union that's already doing that can fully meet the compliance obligations from the CDFI fund. It's just getting familiar with some new systems, and we have lots of support to help you with it. One other just quick clarification as well. The October 15th NCUA application deadline for the Streamlined application is one of two ways to get certified. And as NCUA itself will tell you, because of the specific structure of the Streamlined process, credit unions that do not qualify, that apply to NCUA and are told that they don't meet the Streamlined requirements, many are still eligible for a standard application. And the standard application, certification applications are accepted by the CDFI fund on a rolling basis. So if you do go through the Streamlined and you don't qualify for that kind of easy pass lane, the express lane to certification, please contact us. You may still be eligible for a standard application process. And because of all these opportunities coming from the CDFI fund, whichever path you take, we encourage you to get moving on it right now. We estimate from public data that there are approximately 500 credit unions around the country that are highly eligible for CDFI certification, of which about 70% are minority depository institutions. So with this big minority lending program coming up next year, we really encourage you to pursue your certification as soon as possible.
That's an excellent point, Terry, because if you're not certified by the time the grant application opens, you won't be qualified to apply. So that's a good point. We're open still for questions if anybody has any. While people are thinking of their questions, I'll just kind of add in a couple of things. Chriselle sent out the link for the Capital Magnet Fund application that's open right now. It isn't a short application, because we do assess both, your financial and organizational capacity, as well as track record and pipeline and business strategy. So if you're at all interested, please do look into that now. They will be holding some webinars for potential applicants. Those will be advertised via the same way we send out all of our information for the eGov delivery system. But, I know there have been some credit unions that have been successful in getting grants from that program. So I just wanted to put that on your horizon. And do we have any other questions? It says, okay, there's still going to be office hours. Okay, that's for you, Terry, not for us. We're not. Okay.
The streamlined application window, this is the last one. October 15th is the close of the last one for this year. NCUA has 2 application windows per year, so the next one won't come probably until March or April of next year. That, and they usually stay open for about a month. So by that time, you will have you might have already missed some opportunities.
Yeah, that's likely, because we try to open the regular FA and NACA rounds the first quarter of the calendar year. So yeah. Could we talk about how RRP funds could be used for development services purposes? Does that include salaries for staff that offer development services? I'll let Andrew and Heather take a stab at that.
Yeah, so the RRP funds, and again, refer to your assistance agreement, because if you received a minimum award of $200,000, there's a difference between your financing activities that are required under the agreement and what we could consider more technical assistance like resources, which would fit with the question here from Jennifer Thompson around sort of operational administrative expenses is the requirement for the $200,000. Now, again, if you got a minimum award, it doesn't preclude you from using it for other eligible activities, which includes financing activities. It's just that it's not incumbent upon it. If you did receive more than $200,000, there are financing activities that are stipulated in the assistance agreement as far as what it has to hit. And as Heather mentioned, if you have any questions about your assistance agreement specific to your organization, we love answering questions and could follow up with you directly with a service request. But broadly speaking, that's the sort of division between the activities. I don't know if Heather, you have anything to add.
Nope, I think you touched on everything. Thank you, Andrew. And then I actually, real quick, we'll monitor this through the submission of your uses of award report. So you'll see a drop down where you can tell us that that's how you use those funds.
If I could just add as well, for those of you that attended our webinar on audit requirements related to RRP, and in particular the single audit requirements, if you got a large RRP grant, and whatever it was, I think 75% of credit unions received the maximum award and are likely to be doing a single audit, we would strongly recommend that you simplify your allocation of the award to capital reserves or loan loss reserves, as that greatly simplifies the audit of those funds for the single audit purposes. If you're using those funds for also eligible uses, but things like development services and everything else, it's a more involved audit process for the CPAs that are doing your single audit. So that was just one of the recommendations coming out of that particular webinar.
I just want to say thank you. I think we have to wrap up. We've only got about a minute left. Thank you to all of our panelists, Deputy Director Sigal, Andrew, Heather, Terry. Thank you for your expertise in being on the call. I'd also just like to make a quick announcement to please visit our exhibitor booth during lunch and throughout the day, and to return at 1 o'clock to join us for the rest of our wonderful annual conference. So thank you to everyone, and we hope to see you this afternoon.
Thank you for having us. Take care, everybody. Be well, be safe.
Thank you.